Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Drew, Sherb, and Hunter in the house with DJ Ted on the
Wiki.
mix panel.
Nice.
So if you've been wondering where the Goon Squad has been, just like anything else in the world, it took about a year for COVID to make its way to Maine. And it showed up, and we've been in quarantine for a while. So that's why if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're wondering if it's maybe sounds a little bit different on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, it's because we are back home for a little while. We're going to start this off with a little fun. What have you been doing during quarantine that is neither extremely inappropriate or completely normal?
Answer.
Or completely normal. All right. Someone's up. You guys haven't been doing anything.
This time I immediately settled. This time, yeah. This time I immediately settled into the wake up and go for a walk routine. Because it took me 2 weeks the first time to realize that I wasn't sleeping well because I was walking 38 steps throughout the entire day. So I actually got up, started the day with going out for a walk, even while I was, I'll put my mask on, walk around the block basically. And now I'm able to actually go run errands and whatnot. So that's helped a little bit, but that was my immediate day one. I need to establish this now or I'm going to be fucked for 2 weeks.
Well, way to make me feel bad about mine.
Yeah.
So I've been playing maybe a little bit more Nintendo Switch than I had been basically at any other point in my entire life. I don't know, not video game guy, really. I played sports video games growing up, and obviously when I was little, Mario and Mortal Kombat and shit like that. But I've been playing Mario Odyssey, and because I don't play video games, I'm stuck on Bowser, basically. I think I've made it sort of to the end, but it's the first hard level, and I just die within 30 seconds every time. So last night I downloaded a new game. So that's how I'm doing against Bowser.
I did
walking,
break out the N64.
Okay. All right. Well, it's and with the Switch, you can use the handles. So I can throw his magic hat at people with my arm. So, I mean, that's something.
I've been rewatching The Sopranos. I haven't seen that in years and years, and I figured why not, since I'm stuck at home for an extended period of time. And once Z goes down at 6:30, there ain't much to do around here. So I've been watching a lot of HBO reruns.
What season are you on?
It's good. Season 3 right now, halfway through season 3. I don't think I ever actually finished the first time I watched it. I watched 4 or 5 seasons, and then I don't know, for whatever reason I stopped caring, or I think it was on VHS at my house, so it was popping in the tapes from the library.
Well, it was always tough because you come back from college break, and it depended on whether someone in your family had scratched up the DVD set or not. You'd get on an episode, it'd start glitching like crazy, and you're like, "Who's been watching episode 27 on repeat? What the fuck is the problem?"
Yeah, no, it's good. It's definitely entertaining, and just kind of been hanging through, and trying to move around a little bit. I'd say the exercise the level right now isn't the highest it's ever been, but just
come on, you loser! Everyone follows you on Instagram. Everyone knows you're.
Yeah, I took 5 days off. I didn't do anything. It was so strange.
Wow. Okay,
you fat fuck.
True.
What about you, Ted? Swine. Anything good?
No, nothing good. When you can't taste or smell anything,
I'm gonna ask, is it back yet?
you don't even have a desire to cook or eat or anything. It just it sucks a lot. I've been walking my dog a lot and taking videos of my dog a lot and sitting on the couch.
Feeding my dog a lot.
I got so fucking bored the other day that I tried to read a book, which is
heyo.
What'd you go with?
That's not something that I ever
Goosebumps
would do.
Choose your own adventure.
It's called It's called In the Blink of an Eye. It's a book about video editing.
Yeah.
Really exciting shit. Something that I can really relate to. I think like 30.
That's pretty good.
They're like
one.
There's not a lot of words per page though, so
It's a picture book.
I tried. It was an interesting book, but I don't know. I just got to a point where I couldn't sit there anymore, so I stood up and like walked around the house. I've been walking probably like 2 or 3 miles a day though with the dog, so
that's good.
I'm outside. I'm outside at least a little bit.
All right, so podcast. This is not just a podcast about us talking about Nintendo and The Sopranos, and these guys trying to show off with all their walking. We have more news on the changes to the CrossFit season, and we're going to address those. We're going to go through some of them, but one of the challenges I think that I'd like to put out, to Sherman Hunter is, what does this information mean to an athlete specifically? And just these ideas that we've talked about for years in terms of, how does an athlete peak? How do they decide when to peak? Do you train really hard year round? All these different things. And while we don't have a full, complete picture right now, I think the picture is pretty clear for 99% of people, somewhere, in the 90+% range. So as we're going through this, basically the idea is just to, instead of trying to guess what's, up their sleeve next, talk about what this could potentially mean for athletes and maybe how they can approach it from a mental aspect and a training standpoint. I would say the biggest news that we got, from the rule book being released the other day, it's not a complete rule book, but it gets them, I think, at least through the open, is the continent boundaries. This is like very big news because regionals are back, basically. Obviously, the formatting's a little bit different, but regionals are here. Obviously, we don't know how many people are going to go to each region, how many people are going to qualify from each region. And that's something that I think we should address now because, I just went through a few pages of the open leaderboard last year to take a look at what the percentage breakdown was per continent. For the men, we've got 62% of the top 100 athletes being from North America, 26% from Europe. I dare one of you guys to try and say the next one. How do you say it, Sherb?
Oceania.
But it's not this. It's an IA at the end. Say it again with the IA at the end.
Oceania.
Well,
Oceania.
Oceania.
Yeah.
I've heard Oceania before, but it's okay. So I don't know how to say that.
What I say.
Australia, 8%.
Why did you go with Australia? Just because that includes, I guess, New Zealand and Tasmania.
Tasmania, bruh.
And there's like some different stars in the flag. That actually, I shout out to the flags in Oceania because it wasn't confusing at all. I didn't have to keep hovering over with the mouse to figure out what the flag was. So that's at 8%, and then we dwindle fast. Asia 3%, Africa 1%, South America 1%. Women, North America 49%, Europe 30%, Australia 11%, South America 5%. Asia 3%, Africa 1%. So we bring this up because one of the things that we found out from the rule book is that 10% is actually going to happen. There's no set number of people, but the 10% of who is going to qualify is coming from the region itself. So it's not worldwide and then filtered back into each area. It's 10% of your region, of your continent. And then that is the people that you compete against. And I mean, I don't know you guys' immediate thoughts, but for me, obviously, this is the exact opposite of what now America essentially has to deal with, what the rest of the world had to deal with when there were, 79 regions in the United States and a quarter of one in Europe, right? So like we don't know how many people are going to qualify from this, but if this is one single event, like you can't take 60% of the people that are qualifying from an event, assuming that it's going to be, athletes, maybe 20 to 40, somewhere in that range. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they release the rest of this information, because from what we see now, it's going to be extremely challenging for someone in North America, and even Europe, to be honest, to qualify, because Europe is very top heavy. One of the things that I noticed is, especially on the women's side, not a lot of North Americans that qualified through the Open last year, but then a ton scattered throughout that, 21 through 100.
I think the first thing that stands out is it looks like to me like they're trying to get some level of parity in the sport. Obviously, like you alluded to in the past, like there were, I don't know, of the 11 regions,
this
9
would
were in
create
North America, and now there's 2 outside it. Exactly. So I that's what I'm saying. I think they're trying to find some sort of compromise, because obviously just letting every single world champion come to the CrossFit Games was a kind of an exciting thing, but I would say honestly probably a failed experiment, because after one event, people that you thought would be there outside of 1 or 2 anomalies were the people that were there, and the rest of them kind of got, told thanks for coming, but your weekend's over. So to me, it feels like it's kind of swinging back in the other direction in a way of trying to find balance while still allowing people who are in those less popular countries for high-level CrossFitters still getting a chance to have representation there. So for me, it feels like it's just kind of the pendulum swinging back towards, let's see if we can get a better representation of the fittest people across the entire world versus just the fittest in either, one part of the world versus another.
I think it's just kind of tough to make like kind of an assessment until we know. Yes, we know 10% are going to move on to the quarterfinal. It's 10% of each continent, but we don't know how many are then going to go to the respective semifinal, and then how many slots per semifinal are going to be allocated for the games. I would have to assume it's going to be similar to the regionals format. They're not going to send, 10 North Americans and 10 South African South American males. That probably wouldn't work, but I think it'll be it. I think we have to I'm going to reserve my thoughts on that until we know how many people are going to advance like to the in-person semifinals, and then what those semifinals are going to look like as far as how many athletes get sent to the games themselves.
Yeah, you would hope that even if it's population based, how many they send from each one, you would hope that's the kind of thing that they would put in place. Because one of the things that I did not do that we could potentially do for a future episode is look at North America takes up 62% of the top 100 or 49% for the women, but out of what percentage of actual participants? That's one thing that we don't know. So we don't know if a certain continent or region is overperforming or underperforming. The one thing that I will say, so if you're looking at this from the athlete's standpoint, obviously in those, in North America, in Europe, it's going to be harder to qualify. It's going to be more challenging to qualify no matter what. It doesn't really, the numbers are so skewed that even if we're surprised by the amount of people that they take, it's not going to even out. So it is going to be more challenging, for those people. Now, that being said, the first thing that came to mind for me is, so if I did the numbers correctly, that 3% from Asia on both sides is all Russia. Each person from there is no one from China, Japan, Southeast Asia, any of those areas. And a few years ago, a couple of us were invited to teach a seminar and sort of do an appearance at a competition in the Philippines. And one of the conversations that I had with the athletes and tried to talk to them about was like, you guys need your beacon of what sort of fitness level you need to be at to compete with the rest of the world, or at least to get the ball rolling. Like, there needs to be someone, because there was I believe the max snatch event, the winning weight for the men's was 170 pounds, and that was considered a really big deal over there. And they need someone to come through that, even if the person moved there, to be honest, that snatch is 225 to get it started, and has a CrossFit total over X amount of weight, and can row a 5K, and at a 150 pace or something like that. Like, those regions need that type of thing to happen, in my opinion, for them to really get there. And one of the ways for that to happen is to give them access to the rest of the world in terms of competing. So I think I get the idea of the big picture. I just don't know how it's going to be possible for them to make it quote unquote fair for the rest of the world for a while.
So basically, just alluding to the fact that this is the right step. It's a step in the right direction, but it might take a few years for it to shake out and to play in a logical fashion and actually get the right representation from these countries.
Right. Exactly.
I think unfortunately, this is more of a socioeconomic sort of problem than it is like a CrossFit and fitness problem. It's just, I think it's not a coincidence that especially for the bottom, for those bottom, the South Africa, South America, or I'm sorry, Africa. I keep saying South Africa, Africa and South America.
They are the only country to have representation in Africa. So
yeah. So I think they did do a cool thing. I think because Rosa, kind of alluded to the kind of the buying power and the overall the value of the dollar, and so the entry fee for the Open is $15 instead of $20 for Latin America and Africa, which I think is terrific. But until some more basically things that a lot of us listening to this take for granted, things like internet access, the physical availability of equipment and information and stuff like that, until that continues to extend further sort of to as many more people as possible. I think that's going to be equally as important as getting that one athlete who comes out of a region or an area like the Philippines and all of a sudden starts to drag the level of competition up higher. It's going to be, it's not just a fitness and, exercise related issue to be addressed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I did to sort of see how a lot of this stuff plays out, because we have our official announcement of the Affiliate Cup being back. You've got the 4-person teams have stayed, which is something that we wanted, something that I think a lot of people liked more from the standpoint of visually, and then obviously now with it being the Affiliate Cup specifically, getting 4 people that train at your gym is astronomically better from a standpoint of performance per athlete than 6 people. So that's good. The quick notes that they have on this, must be active member of the affiliate for the duration of the season, which I think is a little bit new. Sherb, correct me if I'm wrong. Before, there was a date that they had set where you had to be in the area, and now it seems like it's just once the Open starts. It doesn't say that explicitly, but it hints at it in a few places.
It says January 1st. It says January 1st.
Really? Because the only stuff that I found on January 1st was about affiliate owners. Affiliate owners can't change as of January 1st. You can still speak to that, sure. So that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think in the past they had really just tried to say, once this date occurs, you need to get over half of your training done at this affiliate with these people. Otherwise, you are no longer qualified to be on these teams. And, some of the things I'm excited about that I think is very interesting is some of the rules they put in place to kind of make sure that it does stick to an affiliate team versus a super team of people who are somewhat close by. Like they gave the example of, Mayhem and Scott Panchik being on that team, but he lives 500 miles away, which now would technically disqualify him unless he moved residences to, somewhere in Cookeville, Tennessee. So the way I understand it now is that
we could have joked that he could take Fraser's house, but they made up and shook hands. So now that joke doesn't work, but keep going.
No, I mean that's basically all I had to say. But to me, it's nice that they're actually putting steps in place to make it a true affiliate cup. Because don't get me wrong, the super teams thing and the potential. I know it's not what we're talking about right this second, but like the potential to have two separate seasons, a individual season and a super team season, keeps CrossFit kind of at the forefront year round, which is exciting for us, and provides more opportunity for athletes to not only compete but to earn a living being professional athletes. That's very interesting. But I do love the fact that something that's very community centric and very athlete dependent. It allows more people to essentially participate in the high level sport, which is something I think Eric really cared about, because he alluded to the fact himself that he's very, very fit, but like got one weekend and then his whole year was over. So to me, It's very exciting to have that opportunity as an athlete to be like, you know what, I could go individual, I could go on a team, or I could wait until the super team season and go do super team instead, because, just again, more opportunity for athletes. And again, as the sport grows and evolves, that's kind of one of the necessary iteration of how it should go.
Right. Hunter, did you
I definitely like
that?
So it says affiliate cup teams in the open. Teams will consist of 2 men, 2 women, and train primarily at the same affiliate starting no later than January 1st of the current competition season. So January 1st is kind of that cutoff date, the 100 miles thing. I think they put in there the kind of standard.
Say January 1st when they release the rulebook.
That was my.
I did think about that. I was like, that's rough. That's rough timing. But the robustness of this rulebook is like, I'm sure they released it as soon as they feasibly could, given the addition of the like adaptive athlete rulebook and all like the changes there as well. But I do like the kind of stipulation, like the 100 miles. They do still have the requirement to sort of prove that you're training there, or that they could ask about that, whether it's things like whiteboard photos or social media, and then just the physical, having to physically live that close. I like that, just because, again, just from the affiliate cup, the affiliate team sort of thing. Great. I'm glad the super team thing is still a thing, but is off kind of. That's going to be a separate entity where we can actually see some, 4 men or up to 6 if we include the alternates, like compete and represent the affiliate. And then it'll be cool to also see the game's leaderboard show actual affiliates and where they rank, like, and not have to, I'm not trying to. CrossFit MF in Portland, Maine isn't competing against Mayhem Freedom, for a spot on the leaderboard. Like, we're competing against.
We had him this year.
Yeah, we were really close. But I think that'll be fun. I think that'll incite, and if they do have kind of the leaderboard capabilities that they've had in the past, we can see like, oh, who's the fittest affiliate in the state? Who's the, that sort of thing. And we get
so
down
it's actually not going to work that way though, because you have to say who your team is prior to the open. So it's not the gym as a whole. You would have to register separate teams to show up on that leaderboard. So that's what makes it different from the past. You're not pulling scores from your entire gym. You are setting your team up. And personally, I think that kind of lends a bit more to the legitimacy of it being a separate division, and not just like, oh, you didn't make it individually, so here's this aggregate of backup plan type deals. That to me is kind of exciting. But yeah, Hunter, it does look like that they've got the custom leaderboards back. So I don't know whether you're going to be able to see a gym in its entirety on one of those. You'll be able to see all of the people from the gym because you can use the hashtags like they've had in the past. But I don't know that there's a way to aggregate members of a gym. Well, maybe there is.
Yeah, I mean well, that's what I was alluding to, because part of it says like CrossFit will host a leaderboard ranking for all affiliates in good standing, and every affiliate will register once they basically, like, when members sign up, they'll associate themselves with your gym, and then CrossFit will have a separate leaderboard that is separate from the affiliate cup leaderboard. So I guess that it is a little different. It's not like the competition, the 4-person team competition affiliate cup, but more like just for your regular affiliate athletes, like kind of pride in the gym sort of idea.
Right. So basically what I did is I went through and signed up for the open. And I was joking with the guys earlier. It's a good thing I've been doing my V-ups at home because I am officially a masters athlete this year.
Congrats.
Dusty
Okay,
old
Bro,
man.
call them out or what?
But it's annoying because, like, yeah, I said Neil Maddox, watch out. It's annoying because I don't like immediately get to scale down to like 75-pound thrusters or anything, which I wouldn't want anyways, because the lower the weight, the worse I am typically. But so I went through the sign up process, and basically nothing is new or weird about the sign up process. You go through it, and then at the end on the side, it shows you which continent you are in, and basically says prove citizenship somewhere else if you want to be in another place. And then there's a note at the bottom that says you must edit your info and join a team by, I thought this was interesting, March 15th at 5 p.m. So basically that's right before the first open scores would be official, like right before it'd be locked in. So it's not even actually signing up for the team prior to. Now, is someone going to make some massive change based on the first one when they, can't move to a new place retroactive to 3 months? Probably not. But basically you go in and you put in your 2 men, your 2 women, and your 2 alternates, and you're locked into that. You can't change it at all after March 15th at 5 p.m. So I guess if you break your leg on 21.1, you can slide somebody else in before that. But
that's it.
Try not
you break
to.
your leg in 21.2, you're fucked.
Try not to do that. I think looking at this logistically, like going from that 3-week open to the quarterfinals, which we'll get into next, I think logistically it's extremely smart to have this like smaller, more manageable chunk for affiliates. We've joked about how by week 5 you're celebrating that it's over once it's done. So like the people that are moderately interested or interested, just to have fun with their friends, I think the 3-week is pretty cool. And then even though 10% is a large number, it's dispersed across so many different affiliates. And I think it becomes much more appropriate to, have heavier weights, or, I don't know if they'll, start to stretch the machines that you use or anything like that beyond, just the rower. But I think it's really smart to keep enough people involved that each gym stays interested, because you're probably going to have a handful of people from your gym, but not make it such a thing that the gyms have to try and survive through all of this for, that long period of time.
Yeah, it allows people to be fans at their own affiliates. I mean, that's kind of what's cool about the regional format back in the past, was that you had these, couple dudes, couple ladies at your gym that were really, really fit, and you got a chance to go watch them for a weekend. And it not only was a chance for people to just kind of hang out and celebrate their friends, but it was a very tight-knit community thing. I mean, remembering going down to Reebok headquarters in Canton, Mass, and having 40 people in purple t-shirts in the stands for just our local affiliate before like Misfit had fully like blasted off to outer space kind of deal. But it was really interesting to see like how much people really did enjoy going out and watching the sport of fitness. You had people, there's like a caravan coming from Portland, Maine down to Massachusetts that celebrated these people. And this will allow, to me, like you were kind of alluding to, Drew, a decent amount of people to still be celebrated and keep that interesting for the select that really do care about it. But it also makes it so it's not like, oh God, I'm fucking going to do 2 more of these workouts. I'm ready to start drinking on Thursday night or something instead. You know what I mean? Like just very, very different mindset and approach that now is available to people.
I'm personally torn a little bit on what my opinion is of it, because I can see it from different perspectives. I've talked about on the podcast quite a few times that my single biggest moment as a coach really felt like watching that CrossFit MF affiliate team. So I think it would be weird for me to, at regionals, to come in and say, I don't like that they're doing this. Those ideas kind of contradict a little bit. But I was also, from a fan standpoint, not from a coach standpoint, more interested in the super teams last year than I had been in anything in terms of, visually watching and being excited about a thing. So it's, I don't really know what my opinion on it is yet. And it will be interesting to see, has the sport progressed enough since the last time the affiliate cup was in, to go in and be like, okay, these teams there still is enough star power. There still is enough, there are enough people that can go out there and compete with, I'm assuming, some of the, the training hubs are going to have the better teams, the people, the programs that convince people to move to their area. It'll be interesting to see if a gym that you've maybe never heard of can compete with those teams. That to me will be sort of the litmus test for whether I'm super bummed that super teams are gone or not.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the interesting part here is that with this new format, and I agree with you, Drew, that going to regionals in the past and watching the bottom heat of teams of people you don't know wasn't necessarily the most entertaining thing to do, especially if it were a 20-minute AMRAP with whatever going on.
I kind of think that it offers the at the CrossFit Games in Carson. I'm just sorry to bring that up.
We did see that. I'm a big Bob. But you got to think about it from the standpoint of I honestly think that like athletes who are, these communities of people have the opportunity to go celebrate these members again. And I do think that while you might not have the same star power necessarily at the stage or how this is going to work, but there's the opportunity for people to be excited about their own affiliate. And again, just kind of bolstering community, because that seems like the number one thing that's on Eric's mind. While bringing the sport back, that's important, but it's not more important than making sure the community grows and grows, because that's ultimately the aim of CrossFit, is to grow the community. So to me, it allows the opportunity for gyms that have members who are like, I don't know who the hell Matt Frazier is, but I know who like Austin Spencer is. I work out with him 2 days a week in the gym. Like there are those type of scenarios that I think are going to come back and I think actually push the sport in the direction it was going in, like the 2013, 14, 15 direction, as it was kind of reaching its pinnacle before that little low we just had.
Right. Yeah. I think with the numbers, even though regionals are back and it's going to be more of an opportunity for just a barely larger percent of the population to have an in-person competition. The fact that we're going to get into the quarterfinals now. The fact that it's 25% of teams from the region, from the open, make it to the quarterfinals, which is exciting. So I think you're going to get back into the handful of people that either from your local gym or the one across the city or the one in your state, region, whatever. There's going to be that feel again where it's like someone your friend could be an outlier, in one of these actual regionals or on one of the teams. And I think that was the main reason that the sport dropped off as sharply as it did when they made all those changes. Because there's so many people, like, not only can I not go anymore, but like all of the people that probably did the open to just sort of support, the hometown hero or whatever, like that's another layer behind that person that's like, what's the point? Like, you can do a workout. Like, why do I care where I'm at on the leaderboard if there's no chance for me to get anywhere and do anything? So
having the opportunity is definitely going to make it more exciting, I think.
Right. So quarterfinals, just to sort of reiterate, 10% of individuals from their perspective continent, 25% of teams. I'm guessing that number is 25% because obviously there are going to be less teams, quite a few less teams than individuals that actually take the time to sign up.
And it says 50 teams minimum. That's kind of the...
Yeah. And then athletes, this part's very interesting, is athletes can do individual and team. And the reason they're able to do this is because they're not intending to backfill at all, depending on who decides to go individual and who decides to go team. That was one of the big questions that we had before, do they have that week where, there's no competition because they want to know quickly who's going to qualify for individual. And now they don't really need to have to be able to do that. Basically, you either qualify based on, the comparison against your peers, whether you're an individual or a team. And then if you decide not to go, you're just not going. So they don't necessarily have to go in and backfill those spots. And I think that makes a lot of sense, and it makes it a lot easier for an athlete to just go in, and then it obviously makes sense for them from an attention standpoint. They're going to be able to keep attention because the athletes will just go ahead and do both no matter what.
It was such a nightmare to deal with the sanctionals, sort of like, I qualified as an individual here, but I'm on a team here, but it's the third Thursday of the month, so I'm actually not eligible to be on this team. It was such a pain in the ass. So I think they've just alleviated a lot of those issues by just making it a little bit more transparent, and ultimately that just takes a lot of pressure off of athletes, I think, to kind of do the flow chart in their head of if this then that sort of thing. It's like now you still, for the fittest out there, and I'm sure we'll get into it, we're not all that concerned about the first 3 workouts of the Open because you're probably going to go on to the quarterfinals. This kind of, your season is now those 4 or 5 days of quarterfinal workouts rather than just those top 3 in the Open. But I think it just makes it a lot easier for athletes to not be super concerned about, like I said, that flow chart of how I get to the games, if assuming that's the goal.
All right, Misfits, just a quick break. Shout out to our show sponsors, Proper Fuel. You can head to properfuel.co. Proper Recovery is back in stock. Your complete post-workout nutrition solution, whey protein, carbs, creatine, fenugreek extract, leucine, digestive enzymes if whey normally bothers your stomach. We got it all in one jug, and we are very pumped to have it back in stock. If you have not tried it yet, you can use the code word MISFIT to save on your first order at properfuel.co.
We are also brought to you by Pure Spectrum CBD. Head to purespectrumcbd.com. Check out their products. You can use the code word MISFIT to save some cash. I've been personally really liking the salve lately. I bought my own little Graston tool just to like work a little bit on the musculature around my knee. Turns out it was just super tight because I haven't static stretched in like 14 years. I just kind of rely on warming up and general mobility. But since then have used that salve to like work into the skin, into the tissue, which just combined with that kind of massage has really loosened it up and just makes me feel pretty good. So if you're somebody who's working out consistently, which I'm assuming most of you listening to this are, give that a shot. Again, purespectrumcbd.com. Use the code word MISFIT.
We are also brought to you by the best swag in the game, Sharpen the Axe. Head to sharpentheaxecode.com. Use the code word unprepared to save a little green on your order, or you can use the code word Kiala to save 10% or to give 10% of your order to the Kiala Foundation. Coming up on January 13th, we've got more lightweight hoodies. If you didn't get it for Black Friday, here's your chance to get it now. There are also more joggers dropping. We've got new STA Mission tees and tanks dropping. And last but not least, the new and improved Capri pant. We've been working on these for the better part of, I would say, almost a year since our first version.
Decade.
We're very excited to bring them to you. So again, head to sharpentheaxecode.com. Use the code word unprepared to save some green.
And last but not least, we are obviously brought to you by ourselves. We are in the throes of open prep, both Misfit Athletics, Team Misfit, and all the programs we got going on. We believe in them wholeheartedly, so much so that we give a 2-week free trial for just about every damn thing that we do. So you can head to misfitathletics.com, teammisfit.com, or the SugarWOD marketplace, affiliate programming, Hatchet, all the good stuff, all the different programs, 2 weeks free. All right, back to the show. Right. And you know, from what we've heard, you know, both just, you know, being, you know, having a little bit more access to some of the people that are involved with this stuff, and then, you know, through, you know, Morning Chalk Up or any of these other podcasts, the looking at the, you know, Castro immediately telling Rosa, like, we got to do this right. We got to do the games right. Like, this is going to help CrossFit. And then whether it was Castro or Rosa or, you know, someone else being like, let's get the athletes involved. They haven't talked a ton about it, but there is the athletes representation. You know, they're one of the groups that comes to the table, and you know that their number one thing was like, we know you guys are going to decide, but if it could make sense and it didn't have to be super confusing and I didn't have to have my astrological chart out to figure out whether I was allowed to sign up for this or do that. I think that's super important. And I think that's probably where something like that came from. Like, so while it's going to potentially take someone's spot, quote unquote, because there is no backfilling, I think with the amount of people that they're allowing to move on to the quarterfinals, there's a little bit of give and take there. So the other big thing with the quarterfinals is that the scores reset. That was another question that we had. So the quarterfinals sort of become this unique online qualifier kind of thing. They become their own event. So you sort of, you go through the open. So if you're, we talked about wanting to have this podcast talk about the perspective of the athlete. If you're one of the best athletes in the world, the open is not going to be anywhere near as stressful as it was before. Now, obviously the open, you could say, because it's so close together, that the open is really 3 workouts and then these next ones, but it's going to be a much different environment, we know, at least at Misfit Gym Portland, when it comes to getting someone through a workout. And one of the things that's interesting about that is how many athletes are going to do better because it's less stressful.
I was gonna say, I think something that's really interesting about the not having the first 3 weeks essentially matter for the highest level athletes is that you now have this format that's been kind of adjusted and fixed with the age group online qualifier for masters and teens. And obviously they saw something in that they really liked and wanted to kind of put forth into the season just for the, open athletes, the individuals that are competing for the, fittest on earth. So to me, it's very interesting, but it also kind of now makes me think that we're definitely going to get some sort of beefy, 4-day onslaught for these people, because otherwise how would they get a good representation of who belongs in the next stage? That to me is kind of what I'm expecting now, which does kind of, for me, feel like it opens the door to what is possible for them to program versus what's not normal for this time of year, what they would normally put in there.
I think if you're an athlete, I think the obvious thing is, if you're a really high level athlete, someone who does reasonably well in the open to begin with, you probably aren't too concerned with the first 3 workouts, and you basically gain an additional 4 weeks of preparation, including that kind of gap week before your actual season sort of kicks off, or your qualifying attempt. The other thing I would say is, if you're not super familiar with previous regional and age group online qualifier workouts and the implements and movements and sort of programming style that goes into those pieces, you should start doing your homework a little bit, because I do think, like you said, Sherb, it does allow, having fewer people to worry about it does allow a little bit more flexibility. We'll see how many athletes that actually, kind of per gym, are able to do that. And the other thing we don't know is, and this is a question that we kind of had, was for how, what is kind of the requirement as far as the execution of the quarterfinal events in order to go to the semifinal? Is it AGOQ style, where it's just here's a bunch of events, you figure it out? Or is it hey, here's 2, first one is due at this time, second one is due at this time, kind of in that, almost in the vein of regionals, where it's I don't care what you got on your second or third attempt. I want to see what you can do on attempt 1, and how important that is. And then that becomes a consideration as far as equipment and logistics for affiliates. If you have a handful of athletes who, say you've got 10 athletes who are trying to do this, and there are rope climbs that get programmed and stuff like that, and it's does that become a burden, an excessive burden on the affiliate to allow those athletes to do it in a timely manner? And that's kind of a super nitpicky thing. But from an athlete perspective, you got to be familiar with those events and kind of what could be thrown out there, because I think it will definitely be expanded. We've seen other non or CrossFit sanctioned events, like the Mid-Atlantic qualifier. They threw the assault bike in there. Just don't be surprised. You train all of these implements and modalities all year round. Just don't be surprised when it gets thrown onto a qualifier workout to get you to the next level, because it absolutely has to be a robust test of what will probably end up being at least probably 5, probably closer to 7 events over the course of the 4-day weekend.
Yeah, I think the nuance here matters a ton, because from an athlete's perspective, there are some athletes who would say, I made it to the CrossFit Games, or I, seed myself very well because of the open style workouts. And I think that's something that people have complained about for years, depending on which side of the fence you're on. Whether someone can double under dumbbell snatch and toe to bar, really well, do a lot of that versus, not so great upside down or a heavy barbell or, long machine, whatever it is. So the stuff Hunter is alluding to when it comes to the quarterfinals is so important because, those athletes, let's say that the quarterfinals are beefed up. Let's say that they are like the AGOQ and they do, require higher level of skill, be able to move a heavier barbell, that sort of thing, then automatically much different people are going to be qualifying to go to these semifinals that we know absolutely nothing about. But it's going to change the landscape of the athlete quite a bit. Like if you were the, sort of open hero, you are hoping that these quarterfinals are just an extension of the open. And if you're the type of athlete that wishes you could have gotten to, a regionals or a sanctional or whatever to get to the CrossFit Games because you want to be able to show off your whole repertoire, then the quarterfinals being more like the age group online qualifier in the past is much more exciting.
Yeah, I think it will. And like I said, last year, was it last year or the year before, there was the 4K row, like 100, like 80 burpees in a 4K row, like the things that previously we kind of threw out the window as things that aren't likely to show up in the open just from a logistical and affiliate burden standpoint are much less of a concern at this point. So again, just from an athlete mentality, it's just being prepared for anything. Don't think that like it would not be that hard to throw a half marathon row in there and say, hey, set up a camera and take a screenshot of your monitor at the beginning and the end or something like that. That's probably an extreme example, but it does open the door for a lot more things to be tested. And I do think that'll be the goal, to make sure that the right people are getting to the semifinals in the same way that it's always the goal of getting the right people to the CrossFit Games.
I think you're 100% right about being ready for some of those things that are a little bit outside of the box or kind of been saved for the AGOQ. I think there are a lot of athletes that could stand to do their homework. I mean, we always used to joke back in the day that if you looked on CrossFit.com, you could kind of get an idea of roughly what could potentially show up in the open leading up to it, because they tend to drop maybe hints or ideas of things that could occur. So I think you're right about that, Hunter. I think it'd be good for a lot of athletes to go dig into some of those AGOQ workouts and just say, all right, like this wouldn't be in the open, but it was obviously tested here, so I should be ready for it. Like the heavy power clean chest to bar workout that I think you and I did a couple of years ago, like that would never be in the open, but like was a very, very good test of fitness come AGOQ time.
Yeah. I think also like in that vein of paying attention to the main site, you and I were joking about this, or talking about some of the new, like, seems like kind of the modern benchmarks that have started to be released, or kind of the upgraded girl workouts. Like if you don't go look at CrossFit.com, I would take a few minutes to go back and scroll through the past couple of weeks and check out some of those named workouts, because like Castro loves to pull out the old CrossFit Games handbook. The 100-yard handstand walk is from from an article a decade ago in the journal, like those sorts of things. So don't forget about main site.
If you do forget about main site, though, we're not going to forget about main site. And if you follow Misfit Athletics programming, you will be.
Yeah, we got your back.
Because going to main site, I've tried this, and putting your forehead on the workout on the screen does not make you any better at handstand walking. So just going.
I thought that would work.
Was probably. I tried.
I don't know.
Speaking of, you guys alluded to the age group online qualifiers, also 10% per division. Now we are operating under the assumption that the continents have absolutely nothing to do with this, but it is already split up because it's 10% per division. I don't have any clue what the participation numbers are, but I'm assuming they're much higher on the 35 and much lower as you get up into the, I don't know what is the final one, 60 plus?
60 plus.
Yep. And then the awesome thing that we found out is top 20 in each division are going to the CrossFit Games. We've talked about this a bunch. On the Masters side, you're really looking at keeping this massive cohort of people involved in the community and in the sport for much longer. There are definitely people who have spent so much of their life competing either in business or in sport that they need that to stay involved, at the level that, you would consider even just an affiliate member. They're probably going to go, get their fix elsewhere. Otherwise they're going to, join a running club or do triathlons or do some of these other things. So we talk about how important that is. And then, I mean, it couldn't be more obvious why the teen division is so important. And I mean, you two have both worked with teens and masters significantly more than I have, but just the idea of, my well-being being attached to affiliates and the sport. I love this. It's great.
Yeah, I think both situations, both for the masters and the teens, I think is going to make for a super exciting, like, kind of reincarnation of that group of folks. And I'm glad they kept, I'm not sure why they ever went away from it, but scores resetting for those as well come the AGOQ is super important, because we've seen the folks who, find themselves in 100th place going into the AGOQ, and it's almost mathematically impossible for them to crawl up the leaderboard with only a few events. So I think I'm glad they kept that, the resetting of the leaderboard, and then just having the top 20 from each division. Like that's significant. What is there? Six or seven divisions, 140 athletes, maybe even more, I think, if that includes teens. But I think it just adds to the kind of the aura of the season and the spectacle that'll be the games for this year. And hopefully everybody on the planet's vaccinated by then, so we can just not worry about that and go get fucking ham-boned in Madison or some shit.
I mean, I completely understand the idea behind when there was different leadership, why they decided to knock it down. Financially, it didn't make sense to have this thing. But unfortunately, what they did not see is the writing on the wall, that the two populations that they cut from the most were the two that could grow the sport the most relative to anything else they could do, outside of, trying different advertising campaigns or something like that. You have a group of teenagers who are setting themselves up for the highest level of the sport that we all love and watch year round, every single year. Those athletes are now getting opportunity to become well known within the community and then brought forward into, the up and coming, like, hey, these are now the open athletes. And then you also have all of these masters athletes who are showing people what it's like to age with grace and what it actually looks like and what could happen if you take care of yourself on that level. So to me, it's like, I completely understand at first it was a financial decision, but if you take a step back further, you could see how both of those populations need to be a part of the big picture, because if they're not, you're really kind of sort of shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, the long game definitely is super important from that. And then just from like going back to like the CrossFit kind of health perspective, you're trying to pull kids in into kind of that healthy lifestyle early on, and then showing other populations or people, maybe the middle age or late middle age person who's hasn't been active in 20 or 30 years, that this is possible for you to kind of turn the tide on your own personal health and whatnot. But one other like kind of side tangent I just thought of is like, if hopefully this continues to invigorate the teenage division, I wonder if it's going to like what the long-term impacts of professional sports are like. Like imagine if you get, we talk about it all the time, like that we want for CrossFit Games teenagers, like we don't want them just hanging out in the gym. Like we want them playing sports. We want them doing like being outside, doing all the things that most of us did as kids. But if you have those kids who are establishing that massive GPP base instead of the sports specific training that most young kids, coaches, or parents think that should be getting done, like what does the future of professional sports look like? Like, will there be enough kids who are training in CrossFit that are just going to fucking go into professional sports and just wreak havoc? Side conversation for another time, I guess.
I hope. I mean, we joke all the time, but I'm dead serious. Like, if Misfit turns into a massive global conglomerate, you bet your ass there's going to be sports specific training centers, because we know what we could do in that space. We get an opportunity to do it every once in a while when someone's, sort of connected to us, and they bring their kid in, or someone's joining a men's league or something and wants to get back after it. But like, that's a frontier that I think is like massively untapped. It's a whole different side tangent. It has basically nothing to do with what we normally talk about on the podcast, but it's a pretty crazy thing to think about. So these next few things here, I'm basically going to explain them and then have you guys talk to it, because you deal with this much more than I do at the affiliate level. How do you guys feel about? So we got an equipment free version, which I think is cool, just gets more people involved. That one's kind of simple. But we've got a foundations below scaled, so you're assuming someone's new to your gym, and they can be involved. They don't need to know how to do some more complicated movements. And then we have 8 new adaptive divisions. Don't fight over who goes first.
Obvious one for us, I talked to our one adaptive athlete. She's been super excited about it, and she's interacted with some of the folks from who worked with like SugarWOD. They just finished up their an event for themselves, and I'm assuming that a decent number of those people, the Kevin Ogars and whatnot, were heavily involved in the creation of the adaptive division. So I think that's great. And then what was the other half of it? What was the other division?
The foundations.
Oh, yeah.
So,
ahead, sure.
So someone comes in, they're super excited. They're taking beginner's class or whatever, and you're like, no, you really can. They've got a whole new division for you, and you can see, you can track your progress against the rest of the world, or people are getting started, that kind of thing.
Well, to me, again, anything to widen the net that gets to participate and be involved and grows the community and allows the business to kind of run around and do what they want to do and grow in an organic fashion. And unfortunately, what happened in the past is that you'd have brand new people who are like, hey, what's going on over there in the corner? And you're like, don't worry about it next year. It's like for you. And that's kind of a bummer, because these people, could stand to see where they are fitness wise and use that as hey, I started the gym, and guess what? Like the first week there, I had the opportunity to kind of see where I was at. And then next year I can see how far I've gone. And, the anxiety that was around the CrossFit Open and people being nervous about how am I going to do, or I'm not going to get the score that I want, is definitely something that we're still going to live with now, the season's kind of being reinvigorated. But at the same time, the opportunity to have this community building thing, and then to kind of show athletes, here's how much better you can get in one calendar year, and something that CrossFit puts out there, and you can kind of see year to year and how that progress increases. Like, to me, it's just such a fun way to keep, competitive CrossFit part of an affiliate, because, for a while it really seemed like that branching off of like, hey, CrossFit's one thing, the training methodology, and one's the sport. They don't really interact with one another. And, they was talking about how the CrossFit Games were the clown at the car lot distracting people from what the real mission was. These things both coexist and should work as, two arms and like an octopus going in the right direction together versus pulling the community apart. So it's like a very strange idea. I know I said octopus with 2 arms. He's got 6 missing. But it's a very strange idea to say, like, hey, well, let's only care about this, or let's only care about that. Like, these things can coexist. It just needs to take someone who cares about both parts of them and can see how these things can play off one another versus being, all the chips in one basket.
Agreed. Aside from how many arms octopi have.
6 or 12 or 2, I don't know.
So
between 2 and 12.
We know nothing about semifinals. We don't know where they are. We don't know. Yeah. I just wrote LOL. That's another podcast in our show notes. But now we have this, we've got a pretty good picture here. And what I want to end the podcast on is you guys' thoughts on how an athlete should look at this. And when it comes to the competitive season, I would say that we sort of now have 2 categories. We have CrossFit Games athletes and we have, the very serious quarterfinals and semifinals athletes. Those are sort of the two groups that we have here. And if you're wondering, if you're looking at it from the standpoint of like, should I peak for these instead of the games? Like if you're pretty damn sure you're going to the CrossFit Games, then the answer is just definitely no. It's business as usual. It's, going through, definitely going through a smaller peak and taper going into the semifinals. But if you're, a perennial top 10 CrossFit Games athlete, you're still looking at a very similar type of schedule leading into the CrossFit Games. Obviously, a bit of a shorter window than athletes are used to. But when it comes to an athlete that has a real shot at the semifinals, how do you think they should be training from, come February through semifinals?
Hunter, you want up first? You want me to go?
I thought you were getting ready to go, so I didn't say anything.
Honestly, to me,
first time on the full fucking podcast.
Yeah, the biggest thing I see is this new opportunity for athletes. And I actually was talking to Austin last night about this exact same thing about, he's been someone who's been at the competitive forefront of, our affiliate, and obviously was very close to qualifying for the CrossFit Games himself. And just the struggle he's had over the last couple of seasons with things changing and not having as much, involved with it and not knowing where things are going or how it's going to run. To me, the opportunity to stay involved and kind of progress, be engaged again in competitive CrossFit is kind of being reinvigorated again. And for someone like himself, like he definitely will finish in the top 10% for the quarterfinals. That's not really a question there. He'll still need to have a very good weekend in the quarterfinals to kind of get himself a shot at the semifinals. But, for him, he needs to still, put his head down and keep training and knowing that like his semifinals, if he can make to the semifinals in that last stage, that he now has the opportunity to kind of compete at that like stage that has been missing for an athlete of his caliber for so long. Like you either were fit enough to just crush the open and get right to the CrossFit Games, or your season was over after 5 weeks. And like those athletes now have an extended season. So now they need to be, essentially saying to themselves, which makes the most sense for me and kind of what line am I at? And to me, that makes it kind of a, an opportunity for an athlete to work with a coach and say, all right, like, where do I need to be right now? And how do I progress further? And, what's great about what we do every day is that we think about this constantly, and we're going to be assessing what came out of, the open, what went into the quarterfinals. And when we have more information about the semifinals, we'll know exactly where we should take these athletes. But for me, it's, business as usual, and just be excited that there's more opportunity than there has been in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I think the training mentality just I want to be creative with my answer, but I feel like it just goes back to the regional style. Like we were, and it's even more so. Previously, it was like, yeah, you have to do pretty well in the open. Like again, thinking of our Austin, Caroline sort of athletes, but we're pretty confident they'll be fine. They'll go to regionals, and then it becomes what do you got on that weekend? And I think that's what it comes down to. Again, I think the quarterfinals just serve as an additional filter, or maybe the open rather kind of just adds a layer of community prior to the competitive season kicking off. I think for the majority of our followers specifically, your season begins with the quarterfinals. The open is kind of almost like the pregame show, like the opening act, so to speak, that we get everybody fired up, we get everybody excited. The stress is probably a little bit lower because it's A, only 3 weeks, and B, again, if you take it seriously, there's a pretty good chance that you'll at least move on to the quarterfinals. And then from there, it's about teeing yourself up for that weekend. And I do think it'll be a little bit different, just because with the open, obviously you are training to peak twice a week, basically. You've got 1 or 2 shots to do and redo an open workout. But as far as approaching the quarterfinals, that becomes a little bit more of a, and I guess I don't want to say marathon, but like, you got to be dialed in for 4 days straight. And depending on how they release the workouts, like, be prepared to be very much one and done, by default.
Yeah, I think what changed with these announcements in terms of how you should attack the season is there's a large group of people that need to be training at an extremely high level during the Open, which isn't necessarily the case a lot of the time, especially with athletes that get super scared. We try to nudge people away from that mentality. But now you're looking at anyone who's taking the quarterfinals very seriously, knows they're a shoe-in to get into the quarterfinals. Therefore, the weeks leading up to it can be some of the most important, times in your training when it comes to competing. So, we'll do another podcast. We'll do another one where we talk about this when we get the numbers, but it's going to come down to literally, it's going to be a math equation. You're going to be able to tell based on your past history whether you are closer to a shoe-in for semifinals, or if you truly need to peak and put all of your eggs into the basket of the quarterfinals to get to the semifinals. I think that's a pretty important designation, because if your default setting is semifinals athlete, if you're already going to be there, then you continue to train in the way that you would leading up to a competition, or you continue to train in a way that you would, sort of just in the, what we would call in-season mode, not necessarily for a competition. And then you're going to try to really get after it to get ready for that. But, you talked about Austin. If you do the math on that really quickly, he's still comparing himself to that 62%, right, of that North American leaderboard when he's going into it. Luckily for him, if the workouts are beefed up a little bit, that plays to his advantage. That completely changes what an Open could and would be for him. So I think, to me, with the information that we have now, an athlete needs to understand that they need to be able to be ready to train through the Open. And they're honestly, for individuals, are going to begin their taper the week before the quarterfinals. So the Open's going to be over. They're going to have that week off. That's the week where they're going to, sort of trying to re-energize a little bit. And it's weird to think that that's what you're looking at leaving it open. So I think it's really important for athletes to consider all of these things when it goes into their training and their recovery, and how many pieces a day that they're choosing, what they're going through, when they know that they need to be ready to rock for those quarterfinals, not necessarily for the Open. The Open's, as Hunter, you alluded to, is, it's like the preseason. It's the Hall of Fame game. We're excited football's back on. We'll watch it. But by the third quarter, we're like, cool. Great game.
I think it also serves as a good, a little bit of a tune-up, kind of just that final check before you go into the quarterfinals. It shouldn't, whether you are, you think you're a shoe-in for the quarterfinals, again, statistically reasonable chance, but that doesn't mean you take it that Open should serve as almost like the, you getting through that initial checkered flag and you're doing those couple warm-up laps, everything's dialed in, I'm ready to go. And then I do think for the majority of athletes, there are an extremely small number of people who can classify themselves as training for the CrossFit Games. This is going to become what we will see at the semifinals, the same things we saw at regionals, just a couple of these athletes come and just throw a monkey wrench into the entire fucking leaderboard for the weekend. There are going to be athletes who don't do well under the pressure, or maybe haven't competed all that often very recently. Somebody who's not super well suited to the in-person competition versus online stuff. So I don't think anybody, save those, top 10 perennial games athletes, if you are classifying yourself as somebody who's going to the semifinals, that's going to be your battleground, really.
Agreed. All right, guys, final thoughts time. Take it whatever direction you want. We talked about a million different topics here. This is the Misfit Rulebook Edition podcast. But obviously there's a lot of things, a lot of different things to pick out. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Sherb. You're up.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm most excited about it again is just this ability to invigorate a local community and the idea behind trying to get people excited about, having a reason to train that's not just health and wellness. Because there are people who 100% come to your affiliate and are just mostly like, hey, I saw this and this told me my doctor said I could get off my blood pressure medication. And so that's why I'm here. But there are also a lot of people that are in their like late 20s, early 30s who maybe just got done playing college sports or, club league stuff. And they want reasons to kind of get up and go do stuff, which is essentially why I got into CrossFit, as I was looking for some sort of fitness or exercise outlet because, college sports were all over with. I think that's such an opportunity for the community to grow with and to, have the opportunity to celebrate not only the person doing their first like kipping pull up, but giving people who maybe are looking for a reason why another reason. And, anytime we're talking about getting people healthier and having it done at the affiliate level, like I'm 100% on board with. So to have another reason to care is just super exciting to me. So that's probably the thing that I'm most excited about in terms of like the big picture of what was announced over the last couple of days.
Yeah, I really I appreciate after going through the entire rule book when you kind of take that macro step back and look at all of the things that were kind of thought of from an inclusivity standpoint. Like you're gonna have a hard time pointing at any other sporting event or global inclusive event that includes as many demographics and people as possible in such a way that makes the most sense with the information that we have, making sure that the countries whose dollar doesn't go quite as far as somebody in the US or one of the wealthier countries has a better opportunity to sign up and participate in the open. If you're somebody who can't get into the gym because of COVID or just isn't comfortable being around a group of people, there's the at home or no equipment options. There's this pretty robust transgender policy. There's the 8 different adaptive athlete divisions, 8 different age group divisions. There was a lot of thought put into how as many different groups can be involved as possible. And I think that's something that, like, regardless of where you find yourself on the CrossFit spectrum, that should be something that's like appreciated, and you should kind of be like proud to be part of a community that is by all intents and purposes leading the way in the inclusivity kind of race.
Yeah, I think to sort of put an exclamation point on what you guys are saying, just being someone whose life has been affected to the level that mine has, by the more community side and aspect and health and wellness, like it really seems like we're headed in the right direction. It's a really cool mix of all of the things that make our community so unique and powerful. So I don't want to dismiss that at all. But my final thoughts are, I think, a little bit of maybe a preview to my open rallying cry, call to action speech, and that is just this opportunity to make your mark. On the sport in your own way. I think it's something that we need personally, all of us, every single one of us that's in the CrossFit community, because of how the world has been. I think it's something that we need collectively as a community. But I can tell you from the standpoint of someone who, in traditional sports, it's like, I don't want to say you get through practice. That doesn't send the right message, but you work hard in practice because game day shows up. And when you have that mentality, when you put in the work and you have the mentality of, I get to go out there and, leave a mark on this, this game or this sport or on this leaderboard, in whatever division I'm in, it's this, like, I'm getting butterflies talking about it. Like, it's this very special feeling when you can flip that switch and go out and do something that you never even knew that you were capable of. And this is an opportunity for you to go out there and make your mark. And you guys just alluded to the fact of how many different people can make their mark now, within, their own subsection of a community. So yes, I am talking to the people that I want to help get to the CrossFit Games, but I'm also talking to my parents. I'm also talking to, you guys. I'm talking to all of our members. Like, that's just an exciting thing. It's something where there's just maybe a little bit more emphasis on, maybe I am going to stay after class and try a chest to bar pull up or something like that. There's the idea of being able to make your mark, especially for all those people out there that work their ass off. People just work so hard and then maybe don't flip that switch ever. They don't really get to see what they could be capable of if they did it. We finally have an opportunity to come together as a community all the way through the Open and then all the way through these separate quarterfinals, which are going to be super exciting. So I'm pumped that this is taking place, that this is happening, that this is like, we're back. It feels like we're back. Like, I've been in my house for the last 2 weeks. Like, it's nice to talk about something that gets you riled up and gets you, feeling like it's on. Let's get this going again. Boom. I think we did it. All right, ladies and gents.
I was muted. Show.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. And thank you again to our show sponsors, Proper Fuel. Head to properfuel.co. Proper Recovery is back in stock. And if you haven't tried it yet, you can use the code word Misfit to save on your first order. SharpenTheAxeCo.com. Use the code word Unprepared or use the code Keala, Keala, to donate 10% of your order to the Keala Foundation. And last but not least, PureSpectrumCBD.com. Use the code word Misfit to save. As always, I'm at Misfit Coach on Instagram. Slide into those DMs. Let us know what you thought about the episode and what you'd like to hear next. We'll see you next time.